Now the survivors will take over the program, and what will happen is that each of us sitting here will light a candle in memory of relatives that have been murdered one way or another by the Nazis. Some of us will just light the candle and say the name and relationship. Others will tell a little story with lighting the candle, and we also, most of us have pictures, are lucky to have pictures that we'll show you or that you can see later if you wish. And we'll do it alphabetically. So let me see who begins. Miriam, please. I suggest that we do it here to make sure that everyone hears. This is where it gets personal. This is where we talk about those, and not only our own experiences, but the sadness and memory that lingers, the haunting memory of those who died. For me, it is my aunt. Her Hebrew name was Sarah, and in Warsaw we called her Alla. Alla was my mother's youngest sister. She was the baby of a family of 5 children. When I was born in 1935, she became my other mother. She would take me to the park. She would teach me things. She would hug me. She would kiss me. And she would tell me stories. And she became, at that point, the bondage was just like it was to a mother. She was with us during the bombardment of the Warsaw Ghetto. Immediately after the bombardment, when the Germans came in, we left Warsaw to go to Belarus. And the Germans eventually caught up with us in 1941. And we were in the city of Liga in Belarus. And then the Germans came in, eventually formed the ghetto, and she was there with us. She was there for me to hug and kiss and love just like I had with my mother. And then the ghetto was formed, and we went through a slaughter where 80% of the Jews in the city were killed. And luckily for us, both we and Alla and her husband survived. Around that time, she decided that her parents needed her in Warsaw. And begging her did no good. And she eventually left. We think that she probably got given away to the Germans on the way there. If she did come to Warsaw, we know, of course, where she wound up in Treblinka. And to this day, for years, I cried for her. And those of you who know that I do Holocaust art, I have 4 different art pieces just devoted to her. And she's with me my entire life. And I just want to show you a picture of her when she was a young girl. Thank you. The story for the organization was affected. Miriam's art is around the world, and it's all related to the Holocaust. The second one is Henry Britt, Miriam's husband.
I have a somewhat similar story. I want to commemorate my aunt who lived with us from my earliest childhood till about the age of 8. I have a family picture there of myself with my parents. And she is there in back of me. She was, again, she was very close, very much a second mother. And as I found out later, she had had an unfortunate experience with it. She had married my parents and she were from Poland. She had married very young. Her husband was killed in some of the fighting that's subsequent to the Russian Revolution. She had a little girl, and the girl, at around age 7, died of whooping cough. This is when she came to join her mother in Paris. When we left Paris, we wanted her to go with us, but she had just found a new love and decided to stay. A couple of years later, they were both handing out resistance leaflets, were arrested, sent to Delancey, which was the transit camp near Paris, from which people then went on to Auschwitz. And the thrill on me.
Wir spielen mit der SAP, Emery Butter, mit
I want to honor my father, John Hausenberg, who died in January of 1945 on a train from Bergen-Belsen to Switzerland. He was 53 years old. He died from barbaric treatment in the concentration camps, including slave labor, deprivation of food, and the basic necessities that sustain normal living. My parents, my brother, and I were fortunate to be able to stay together during the time of imprisonment, as when he died on the way to freedom, the freedom which he never experienced, the loss was unspeakable. His body was put on a bench in the train station of a small town in Germany called Biberach. And my mother, my brother, and I had no option but to continue the journey. At the time of his death, I had just turned 14. He was my hero, my idol, my protector. He loved me unconditionally, and I believe that it was he who gave me the strength and the resilience to survive the Holocaust. Of everything he stood for in my life, his greatest and most enduring gift to me was the way he modeled his humanity in the concentration camps. He maintained his dignity, his kindness, his caring, and his compassion for others, no matter how miserable his own condition. He passed away 67 years ago, but he remains a large presence in my life to this day. And I have a picture. Lucky to have a picture. Thank you.
Anna Darcy. Can I see from here?
No.
Oh, no, please come here. Don't take any chances.
here in remembrance of my father, who was taken from Budapest into forced labor in 1942 and died in the hospital floor in Kiev in 1943, suffering from typhoid, pneumonia, together with the patients that he was taking care of. And this is a very brief few words of a much longer story that I wrote about him. My father's yahrzeit was 12 days ago. I was 7 when he died in forced labor together with most of the patients in his care. According to the official notification, it was April 1943. Many years later, on the other side of the world, I accidentally met a man who spent the night lying next to him on the hospital floor in Kiev. Yet so strong was my need of him that in spite of all the proof, I spent many years fantasizing about finding him again. Such was the case in Jerusalem, a good few years ago now, as I watched an Independence Day parade. Among the marching soldiers, I suddenly thought I saw my half-brother. I followed the marchers until they disbanded, gathering the courage to approach this brother of mine. But then the face which so resembled my father's was lost in the crowd, and I turned homeward, my heart still pounding. Many who were believed to have died were discovered years later by a brother or a cousin. Why not my father? In my reverie, my father had not died, only lost his memory, had made his way to Israel, married again, and had a son. And I looked for this half-brother of mine, certain that one day I would see him and recognize him. I would introduce myself, see his joy at knowing who I was, and the two of us would hurry home to my father. This was taken a few years ago, somewhere on a visit somewhere with my dad. Thank you.
Arbor JCC, Arbor